Hello everyone, my name is Ron Fairweather and welcome along to the last in the series of Tuck Shop Tales. I'm delighted to have been asked to tell you my stories today, and because all through the summer I've been looking out the window and seeing all the different types of birds. I didn't know there were so many. I decided to tell you some of my favourite stories about the birds. And also, I'll be throwing in a few fiendish riddles as well. So get a pen and paper ready, and I'll tell you the answers at the end. But first, let's hear a story. Well, in a country far off in a far off land, further than you've ever been, in a bright sunny day, there lived a sultan. Now this sultan, well, he wasn't the kindest of men. In fact, he was big and round, he had a grumpy face, he had a long straggly beard, he had a beautiful waistcoat studded with diamonds, rubies and pearls. He had a big pair of baggy trousers called pantaloons that were baggy at the top and very tight at the bottom. He also had a turban. One of these. Oh, it was magnificent. It had peacock feathers flying from it. It was covered with gold and diamonds. A big ruby sat in the middle. Now, when the people saw the Sultan, they would cower with fear and run away because they didn't know whether the Sultan might throw them in their dungeon at any minute. The Sultan was incredibly rich. He lived in a huge palace with great golden domes, and the doors were made of emeralds and studded with all kinds of precious stones. He owned everything as far as the eye could see. And in his basement, the dungeons, he had 1,000 drawers in an enormous room, and in each one of these drawers was filled to the brim with gold. He was so rich. He was a bit nasty. But most of all, he was very greedy. Well, when I say he owned everything, not quite. You see, just outside the castle walls, there lived a lovely old lady. Now, she had a little wee shed that she lived in, with a little wooden bed, just a few pots and pads, but she had a garden that was surrounded by a little fence. In the garden, she would grow things like onions, turnips, garlic, radishes, celery, cabbage and Brussels sprouts. She would mix all these together and she would make a soup which she generally ate cold 3 times a day. She was very poor, you see. She had nothing. Well, when I say nothing, she did have one thing. Our friend, the cockerel here. The cockerel, he loved the old lady. And he would follow her around the garden as she dug in the soil for her plants. But he would also dig in the soil with his big feet. And in the soil, he would find things like little precious stones, coloured glass, bits of silver and bits of gold. And he would take it in his beak and walk to the old woman's shed, bloop, 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 and drop them on the steps. The old woman, she would take them and gather them up, and she would make them into beautiful necklaces or bracelets or even a fine ring. She would take these to the market, and at the market she would swap them for things like potatoes, bread, butter, cheese, or sausages, sometimes chocolate, and if she was lucky, she would have a nice new dress. Well, one day, in the garden, the old lady was so hot, the sun was beating down on her face. It's so hot, she thought. She would have to go for a wee sleep. And off she went, across the garden, her poor old sore back. Oh, she was bent double as she made it back to her wee shed, and she lay down on her wooden bed and fell fast asleep. However, our friend the cockerel, well, he wasn't finished. He decided he would keep digging in the soil. So dig, 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 dig. When suddenly he went, "Arr!" and he bent his head down. And when he lifted up his beak, in his beak he had a golden coin. This coin, it was worth a fortune. It was solid gold. It was from the time of Alexander the Great. Oh, the old lady would have to eat that soup 3 times a day now. She would be able to live like a queen. Oh, the cockerel was so happy as he made his way back towards where the old lady was sleeping. But round the corner came the Sultan. And he watched as the cockerel walked by him on his way back to where the old lady was sleeping. And he said, "I'll have that, thank you very much." And he grabbed the golden coin and he took it in his pocket and he made his way back to his palace. He was feeling very hungry and very pleased with himself. So he went to his great kitchens, and there they were making his dinner. An enormous dinner. A huge table was laid with all the great foods. There was sausages. There was chicken. There was pizza. There was pasta. There was soup. There was ice cream. There was potatoes. There was mince. There was cabbage. There was onions. There was yogurt. And so he took a great spoonful, and on his plate he put yogurt and beans and ice cream and steak pie and chips and curry and hundreds and thousands on the top, and then a couple of raw eggs. And then he began to shovel it into his great big mouth. He was wiping the bean juice and spaghetti from his beard and licking off the egg yolk, when all of a sudden, from the window ledge, he heard a noise. There he looked, and there was our friend the cockerel. The cockerel was furious, and he lifted up his wing. Can you all lift up one wing at home like this? Lift up your wing, and the cockerel said, and he said it twice, he said, "Give me back my penny!" Can you try that? Give me back my penny! Give me back my penny! The Sultan was furious, and he shouted to his soldiers, "Guards, guards, seize him!" And the guards marched across, and they grabbed him by the neck, and they brought him back before the Sultan. Ha ha ha! Now let me see. Oh, I know. Take him down into the garden and throw him down into the well. So they took him down to the garden. And they reached the well, and they threw him in. What do you think happened? No, he didn't drown. And no, he couldn't swim. But what he did do was he opened his beak and he began to suck in all the water from the well. And he beat his wings and he flew up and away and out to safety. Hooray! Meanwhile, back at the palace, the Sultan was finished his meal and he was sitting in his great throne, his great huge golden armchair, in front of a roaring fire. The logs were piled up and the smoke and the flames were thundering up the chimney. But just at that moment, on the windowsill appeared our friend, the cockerel. He wasn't pleased. Once more he lifted up his wing. Are you ready? Lift up your wing and say, "Give me back my penny! Give me back my penny! Guards, guards, seize him!" Once more the guards seized him and they brought him back before the Sultan. And the Sultan said, "Throw him in the fire." They never hesitated. They threw him in the fire. The cockerel, he landed upon the logs. The flames came up and began to singe his wattle. That's that bit there. And then they began to burn his comb. That's that bit there. And then they went up and round. They started to burn the feathers round his beak. And the smoke went up his nose. He went, achoo! And he spat out all the water from the well. And he put the fire out. And he flew out the window to safety. Hooray! By now, the Sultan had grown tired of this whole affair. He had decided he would go to bed and retire to his magnificent bedchamber. And so up the stairs of the grand tower he went, and into his bedroom, where his servants began to help him undress. But at that very moment, you guessed it, our friend, the cockerel, appeared. He lifted up his wing. "Come on, let's see those wings." And he said, "Give me back my penny! Give me back my penny!" The Sultan was furious. He was jumping up and down. He said, "Guards, guards, seize him!" Once more the guards seized him and brought him before the Sultan. The Sultan thought for a moment. Let me see. Let's if I could do something most terrible and most horrible to him. Now, you see, these sultans, they're very rich, very powerful. And when they give one another gifts, the gifts are always very strange. I mean, last month, a visiting sultan gave him the gift of a painted elephant. And the month before that, he was given a giraffe with 2 heads. So very strange. But the month before that, he was given a beehive full of African killer bees with stings this long, as sharp as needles. Ha! Take the cockerel down to the beehive. And so they grabbed the cockerel and they marched down into the garden to the royal beehive and opened the lid. And they shoved the cockerel in. Bang! In the darkness, 1,000 tiny eyes opened. And they began to buzz. Can you buzz at home? The buzzing got louder and louder. And the bees began to fly round and round and round and round and round and round the cockerel's head. They were just about to sting him right in the middle of the eye, when he jumped back in the corner And as they came to him, he began to peck them. And he pecked them all. The quicker they flew at them, the quicker he pecked. He pushed his head out of the beehive and finally flew off into the sky to safety. Way! Back in the bedchamber, the Sultan was just about to get into his bed. All he had left on was his baggy pantaloons and his turban. When, whoops, up on the window ledge once more appeared our friend, the cockerel. He was furious. Once more he lifted up his wing. In fact, he lifted up both wings. Can you lift up both wings? And he shouted, "Give me back my penny! Give me back my penny!" "Ah!" said the Sultan. He said, "Guards, guards, see!" There were no guards. He had given them the night off. He was about to go to his bed after all. He would have to deal with this himself. He looked around the room and then had an idea. He pretended to look one way and shuffled back that way and grabbed it by the neck. "Got you now. How can I get rid of it?" he thought. Well, how can he get rid of it? Oh, eat it, you think? Yes, eat it. So he tried to eat it. The feathers. The feathers were terrible. He said, throw it out the window. That's a good idea. So he threw it out the window. But it just flew back in again. I can't. He looked all around and no, he didn't have a gun in his bedroom. And no, he doesn't keep swords in his bedroom. It's his bedroom after all. No. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll stick it down my trousers. Down my back of my trousers. And I'll sit on it and squash it. So he did. He sat on it and he squashed it. But the cockerel opened its beak and all the bees got out and they began to sting him on the bum. He pulled the cockerel from his trousers and he said, Here, take the golden coin. I never want to see you again. The cockerel flew out the window and away and away and away and down and down and down until finally he came to the shed where the old woman was sleeping. He woke her up gently and gave her the golden coin. The old woman couldn't believe her eyes. It was real gold. The old woman and the cockerel, the next day they went down to the town and there they saw the money changer. The old woman gave the golden coin to the money changer and he said, I've never seen anything like it in my life. It is so valuable. I'm going to give you £100 million. Oh, that's more than a triple rollover at the lottery. Not that money is everything, mind, because you know what? It's not. But in this case, it did allow the old lady and the cockerel to live happily ever after. That's my favourite story. I just love it. But this is something else that I love. So, I hope you have a pen and paper handy. If you do, try and get your hands on one now. I'll give you 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Half a 1. 3/4 of 1. 0. Okay, if you have your pen and paper ready, I'm going to ask you to do some fiendish riddles. 1 till 10. 10 riddles there will be. And then I'll tell you another story. And at the end, I will give you the answers. The first riddle. Mike is a butcher. He is 5 feet 10 inches tall. But what does he weigh? Mike is a butcher. He's 5 feet 10 inches tall. But what does he weigh? That's number 1. Number 2. I have no eyes, no legs or ears, and I help move the earth. What am I? No eyes, no legs, no ears, but I help move the earth. What am I? Number 2. Number 3. When is it bad luck to meet a white cat? When is it bad luck to meet a white cat? That's number 3. Now, for all you who are very good at maths, this is a maths question. If a peacock and a half lay an egg and a half in a day and a half, how many eggs can a peacock lay in 3 days? 3 days. If a peacock and a half can lay an egg and a half in a day and a half, how many eggs can a peacock lay in 3 days? Number 5. What belongs to you, but others use it more than you do? What belongs to you, but others use it more than you do? Number 6. What is put on a table, cut, but never eaten? What is put on a table, cut, but never eaten? Number 7. What's bright orange with green on the top and sounds like a parrot? What's bright orange, green on the top and sounds like a parrot? Number 8. What gets wetter the more it dries? What gets wetter the more it dries? Number 9. What has hands but can't clap? What has hands but can't clap? And finally, we're coming to number 10. If a red house is made of red bricks, and a yellow house is made of yellow bricks, and a black house is made of black bricks, what is a green house made of? And those are the riddles. Well, we'll come back to them at the very end, where I will give you all the answers, and I'm sure you've got some of them. Think about it. I hope you've written them down, or you could re-watch this later on if you haven't got all the answers, but I'll ask you all the answers at the end. In the meantime, I think it's time for another story. Long, long ago, in a time before my time or your time, in a time before time itself, all the animals and birds lived on the earth in perfect harmony. They were all friends, and every day was the most beautiful day you could imagine. The sun shone, the grass grew, the trees were full of fruits and seeds, and there was plenty for everyone. There were no humans in those days, but the animals, well, they were happy and content, for they were safe and they were free. They look up in the sky, and every day they would see the sun. Ah, what a lovely life they had. Until one day, something very strange began to happen. You see, they looked up in the sky and they saw these white things coming towards them. White, very delicate and beautiful at first. But as these white things gathered together in the sky, they clashed together and they became dark and heavy. And first they made a noise, and the noise was thunder. And they shone and they shook and they sparked, and the sparks were lightning. And then rain began to fall, and the rain turned cold, and it turned into what they now know was snow, and the snow began to fall. It fell and it fell, well, soon it covered their feet. And very soon it was up to their knees. And soon it was up to their chests and above their heads, and even the tallest animal of all, the giraffe, was covered with snow. And the animals were freezing. They put out a message to all the animals that they would meet at the great baobab tree, and there they would decide on what they could possibly do. And so they gathered and they met. And as they sat round, everyone asked, "What can we do?" And someone said, "There's nothing we can do unless we can get an idea." No one had any ideas. Until the little frog spoke up and said, "Why don't we go and see the great spirit in the sky? Maybe he will have an idea." "But how can we reach there?" The giraffe said, "I can barely poke my head above the snow." "Then it must be one of the birds who goes." The flamingo said, I'll go, I'll try and go." And the flamingo, he flew, but the flamingo, he couldn't even get above the snow. The eagle said, "I'll go." And the eagle, he flew and he flew. But the snow choked him as he tried to fly. He flew a bit, but he couldn't even reach the clouds. Little Robin said, "I'll go." And little Robin, he up the top of Giraffe's head and stood on his head and began to fly up into the sky. But it was no use. He fluttered back down to the ground again. Up stepped Eagle again and said, "Who is the best flyer among us?" The hawk said, "Well, it is me." "Then you must try and go." And so the hawk, he climbed up to the top of the giraffe's neck and he began to fly like a bullet, like an arrow, up into the sky, and he reached the clouds. But as he reached the clouds, he couldn't fly anymore and fell back, fluttering down to earth. The next one who stepped up was Rainbow Crow. Now, Rainbow Crow, yes, that's what he was called in those days. You see, Rainbow Crow was just a normal crow. But he was a rainbow crow. You see, he wasn't like what we know crows today. His feathers were all the colours of the rainbow. He was the most beautiful of all the birds. And Rainbow Crow says, "Why don't I have a try?" He also had a beautiful singing voice. "Oh, Rainbow Crow, well, why don't you?" And so Rainbow Crow climbed and climbed and climbed till he came to the top of Giraffe's head. And he flew, and he flew, and he flew, and he flew up and through the clouds, and higher and higher and higher, until he came to a huge flat cloud, and there sat the Great Spirit in the sky. Great Spirit in the sky, I come with a plea from all the animals and birds that live on the earth below. It's no longer sunny, and this white stuff has made us so cold. Where is the sun? And the Great Spirit said, well, these are now the seasons, and this is winter, and this will come every year. But I will give you something that will help you live during these cold times. And the Spirit took a stick and reached up to the sun, and the stick took light, and he gave it to Rainbow Crow, and Rainbow Crow took it in his beak, and he began to fly down and down. Be careful, he said. This is the gift of fire, shouted the Spirit. Down and down Rainbow Crow flew, and the smoke and the flames began to singe all his feathers, and soon his feathers were turning black as the soot and the embers from the stick that was burning in his mouth, his beak. He flew down and down in the smoke, and the stick got smaller and smaller, and the smoke went up his nose and into his mouth. But finally, he made it to the ground with just a little bit of stick left, and they took it. You must gather sticks, and they gathered sticks, and with the stick, with the fire from the Great Spirit, they made a fire. And the snow began to melt around them, and everyone was warm. It was the gift of fire. From that day on, all the animals had the gift of fire, and humankind was to thrive on it. But for Rainbow Crow, he was now black, and his voice no longer was it singing. It was So that's why you see crows have such terrible singing voices. And if you can ever find a crow feather and you hold it up to the sky, you will see it has all the colours of the rainbow. And for his great deed, from that day on, the spirit in the sky made the crow the most intelligent of all the birds. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. It's one of my favourites. But now, it's time for the answer to the riddles. Pen and paper ready. For riddle number 1, Mike is a butcher. He is 5'10" tall, but what does he weigh? And the answer is meat. If you put sausages or anything like that you'll find in the butcher shop, then you're right. But the answer is meat. Ha 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 ha. Number 2, I have no eyes, no legs or ears, and I can help move the earth. What am I? If you said worm, you are correct. Give yourself a round of applause. When is it bad luck to meet a white cat? Well, you may wonder that. When is it bad luck to meet white cat? It's very simple. When you're a mouse. Squeak, squeak. And now, my favourite riddle of all, the maths question. If a peacock and a half lay an egg and a half in a day and a half, how many eggs can a peacock lay in 3 days? If you put 7, you were wrong. If you put 4.5, you were wrong. If you put anything and a half, you were wrong, because the answer is none. 0. Peacocks can't lay eggs. It's peahens. Oh! Sorry, I tricked you there. That's riddles for you, though. Number 5. What belongs to you, but others use it more than you do? Let me think. Somebody said, well, somebody borrowed my football boots. Somebody borrowed mine. I never got it back from them. Somebody borrowed my... No, it's none of those. It's your name. Ah, yes, it's your name, you see. What is put on a table, cut, but never eaten? Butter? No, it's not that. Bread, old stale bread. Oh, you might not eat that. Yeah. What would it be? Cut, but you could cut something with scissors. But no, do you know what it is? It's a pack of cards. You cut the cards, don't you, before you shuffle them? Oh, I like this one as well. What is bright orange with green on the top and sounds like a parrot? Let's think, what's that? It can only be one thing, can't it? It's a carrot. Ha ha! Yes, if you put carrot, you're doing really well. Oh, I think this one, you should all get this one, I think. What gets wetter and wetter the more it dries? It's a towel. It's a towel. Okay, number 9. What has hands but can't clap? It's a clock, or it could be a watch. Anything like that that tells the time that has hands. Have you got that? Well, you're doing well. Well, here we go.
Number 10. If a red house is made of red bricks, and a yellow house is made of yellow bricks, and a black house is made of black bricks, what is a green house made of? Is it green bricks? No, it's not green bricks. Because it's not made of bricks at all. Because a greenhouse are made of glass. Oh!
Well, I hope you enjoyed those stories as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you today. That was the last of Tuck Shop Tales, but do get down to the Storytelling Centre when it reopens, where you'll hear and see lots of other storytellers. But for now, I'd just like to say bye, enjoy the rest of your summer, bye!